multimodal.
Hey, what's going on?
Got another English assignment. What are you doing?
Oh, this? I found it in the trash. It's called a Crunchable.
You mean a Crucible?
Yeah, a Crunchable.
Well, that's a coincidence, because that's exactly what this presentation is about. You idiot! The Crucible, a play written by Arthur Miller about the village of Salem and the witch trials, explores human behavior, qualities, and emotions. To the uneducated outsider, The Crucible may seem like a play based solely on the concept of witches, but it is clear that the witches are not at all the main focus. The actions and reactions of the characters are what is most explored. Miller sheds a light on the experience of the collective and individual in this play. What do we mean by the collective? The collective in this context is the shared behavior of multiple characters in Salem. The idea of witches drives most of the town hysterical, beginning when Betty Paris does not stir in her bed. Her father, Reverend Paris, is in a state of worry, but also suspicion. He knows that the girls of the town were secretly dancing in the woods, which he thinks might be linked to his daughter's illness. However, he is scared to say anything, as it would damage his reputation if he said, "My daughter and my niece I discovered dancing like heathen in the forest." Out of fear and an attempt to keep his authority, he grows suspicious of other characters, like Tituba, Abigail, and Mary. His concerns spread to Thomas and Ann Putnam. He brings in Reverend Hale. He calls for Judge Hathorne and Deputy Governor Danforth. Before it's too long, there is a whole new court collectively looking for people secretly bound to Satan. It's mass hysteria, a shared panic that causes many characters to say rash, often untrue things to move the blame away from themselves. The first thing Mrs. Putnam says is, "How high did she fly? How high?" Giles Corey accidentally ousts his wife Martha for the reading of strange books. The hysteria really sets in when Abigail and Betty call out names of people who had supposedly been with the devil. The collective hysteria hits many characters, drawing in the court and giving everyone the collective mindset of, "Get the witches or the town is ruined." The girls, along with Mrs. Putnam, accuse other members of the town of witchcraft, and before you know it, the rest of the town follows suit, accusing anybody just to keep the blame away from themselves. A case of mob psychology. The townspeople conform just to stay out of trouble, and an excellent example is Mary Warren. Initially, she sides with the girls who begin the whole trouble, sticking with them to save her own skin. When she believes that she will be whipped for dancing and other things, along with prompting from John Proctor, she decides to tell the truth and accuses the girls of lying. However, when the girls betray her and make the court believe that she's a witch, she turns on Proctor, calling him the devil's man. Mary Warren chooses whichever side will keep her safe, ultimately siding with the court and Abigail. She, along with many of the townspeople, do this out of human self-preservation, conforming to the motives of the court. However, there are multiple individuals in the Crucible that stand out and moved against the tide. The nature of these characters shows how people are not the same, and self-preservation is not always their main goal. Take John Proctor, the play's so-called protagonist. Contrary to the rest of the town, Proctor is less of an avid Christian, evidenced by the fact that he will not come to church but once in a month. His belief of witches is indifferent, as he never spoke on witches one way or the other. He believes honesty and truth to be the most important values, and his desire to protect those he loves comes before anything else. He even cast away his good name in an attempt to save his wife Elizabeth. However, this individuality is Proctor's downfall. Due to the mass hysteria that the court is influenced by, Proctor fights against the current, an uphill battle. By putting his values and his reputation first, he condemned himself to die as a witch.
Kind of reminds me of a movie I watched. It had some similar themes.
Yeah, it does.
Harry
The ColeSlawSlank
Potter!
Redemption. What?
Harry Potter. It's got witches.
Moron. Anyway, The Shawshank Redemption is a film that follows in the Crucible's footsteps, with some deviations. Instead of witches, the crime is murder, and instead of John Proctor, it's Andy Dufresne. Andy is a man falsely accused of murder, just like all the witches of the Crucible. He tells the truth of how he didn't kill his wife, however the corrupt judicial system sends him to jail. This is very similar to John Proctor, as he spoke the truth and even opened up about his infidelity, only to be condemned anyway. The jail's warden, Warden Norton, ends up abusing his power and exploiting Andy's abilities as a banker. He uses the system and the corruption for his own good, just like Reverend Parris. Parris uses the mass hysteria to boost his own reputation and power, having backseat control over the court. Later in the film, we find out that Warden Norton and the corrupt-filled court had proved Andy to be innocent, but covered it up to make the public believe they'd never made a mistake. Abigail is very similar in this regard. She uses the court to falsely convict and execute multiple targets, giving her all the power. There is clear irony present in both texts, especially with how characters find freedom. Andy had to be imprisoned for him to commit a crime, the crime of escaping, and upon escaping he was finally free. This is just like how the suspects of witchery in the Crucible have to lie and confess once convicted, so that they may have a chance to live. Overall, the Crucible displays the characteristics of human behavior pretty well, aptly explaining the difference between collective and individual human experience and nature. The Shawshank Redemption only reinforces this by repeating it, showing how Miller captured the human essence and
We'll capture you yet, spawn of Satan.
Huh? What?
That's right, I saw you playing drums to the music of Wicked. That's a musical about witches, you fiend.
Are you kidding me? Come on, you daft twat.